What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Be That Guy podcast. My name is DJ Ligori, and we're on episode number 197 today. Hope everybody is having a great day. Hope everybody has had a great week whenever you're deciding to listen to this podcast. If you're new to the show, what we talk about on this show is how we can be that guy, what that means, how can we master the hard skills of life when it comes to confidence and discipline and consistency, and how can we master the soft skills of life when it comes to emotional intelligence and kindness and empathy when it comes from being a guy in today's day and age, because I think young men today are one of the most neglected groups of people. So I am putting forth effort to try and make a little bit of a dent in that problem. One of the big problems, speaking of problems, that I see with so many young men today, I actually don't even really think if there's like an age range for this, is confidence. And confidence is really this internal thing that nobody can give to you. It is something that you have to build, and it is something that I have been on both the low sides of in my life, where I have had zero confidence. I felt like a total loser. I have felt worthless before. I have felt like nobody truly understands the things that I am going through, and I have felt like this beat up, unique little snowflake, to only realize that so many other young men also experience that as well. Now, on the contrary, I've also been on the very high end of confidence. I've also felt like the man. I've also felt like a total winner. I've also felt extremely victorious, like I had total control of the situation that I'm in. So I know what it feels like to be on both sides of this story. And I remember when it was during COVID. So what I want to talk about today is what does it mean to be confident, right? So if you're a guy right now and you are living at your parents' house, you're at college, maybe you just went to college, you graduated, maybe you graduated high school, you don't know what to do with your life, you feel a little bit of lost. This is where, when I was at that point in my life, I graduated college, I had lost my job, I didn't know where to go with my life, my confidence was as low as it had ever been in my life. All right. And basically, confidence, I think, is a reflection of what you think about yourself in that moment and the probability that you're going to get an outcome that you can handle or an outcome that you want. And at that point of my life, I had as low confidence as I ever had in my life. And I talked to a lot of guys who are lacking confidence. They're lacking the ability to believe in themselves, to go build something with their lives, to go do something of meaning, of value. And that then hurts their self-image. And sometimes they can't even stand themselves and they don't know how to get out of their own way. And so when COVID happened in 2020, I remember when all the gyms shut down. And one of the huge things that has helped me a ton with building my confidence is going in the gym. I've talked relentlessly about how fitness has changed my life, because I grew up with predominantly a father who was a triathlete. We had a gym in my basement. It was something that I struggled a lot with when I broke my elbow. I thought I was physically weak, and I thought that exercise would help me change that belief about myself. So I fell in love with exercise at a very young age. And so when COVID happened and they shut down all the gyms, I was I was pretty nervous in the beginning. I was like, shit. I'm like, this is the one thing that really helps me a ton with my confidence, as it probably does with a lot of other young men or people listening to this. And so I remember being at a bar that weekend when they started to shut everything down. And one of my buddies, really good friends, he was like, you don't think they'll shut all the gyms down? I'm like, dude, there's no way they're going to shut the gyms down. I'm like, that's the one thing that they're probably going to keep open to keep people sane and keep people healthy. And then the next day they shut the gyms down. And so I remember when COVID happened, we were trying to come up with different ways to work out and different ways to exercise. And I remember me and one of my really good friends, who was actually my roommate now, Tyler Updike, we started working out in our attic each morning. And the attic wasn't that big. It really didn't have enough room for two guys to actually work out in. And I remember we had dumbbells, and I was throwing a dumbbell up and like hitting the rafters. I was like chipping the wood. I'm like, dude, I don't think we can do this. Like I don't actually know how to work out in such this small space. And so the next day, what we decided to do was we decided to run to a park, a nearby park that was kind of like a CrossFit park. It had like rings, it had boxes, it had little steps and pull-up bars. And so we ran there, we did a workout, and then we ran home. Funny story, when we ran there this first day, this is in the middle of March 2020 in Rochester, New York. It's probably about 25 degrees outside. We ran there at 5 in the morning. And when we got there, it was super windy, very chilly. The only light we really had was the moon. There were a couple street lights that were on, like, I would say 50, 60 yards away from us, but they didn't really provide us much light. And we did just like a body weight workout. And then halfway through the workout, we saw an animal about 60 yards away from us that looked like a fox or like a coyote or like a big dog. and it was running towards us. And I remember asking my buddy Ty, I'm like, dude, what is that? And he's like, holy shit. He's like, is that a fox? And it was like running at us. And we were both getting ready to fight this animal at 5:41 in the morning on a Tuesday. And we were both like getting ready to like violently assault this thing. And it stopped like 20 yards away from us, looked at us. It's in the dark, so we still can't really figure out what it was. And then it ran away. And I remember we finished up our workout, and we went home, and Ty was like, I don't know if I'm going to be doing the Fox workouts anymore. And I was like, yeah, that was really tough. And so the rest of the day kind of went on, and I was like, damn, what am I going to do to exercise? And so I decided to actually keep doing those workouts for a couple of reasons. One, I really didn't want to do them. And this is where I think I built a lot of my confidence throughout my 20s. And I think this is a very important lesson for guys to listen to, is doing things that you don't want to do builds confidence. All right. Because you basically are proving to yourself that you can get over a hard thing. You can handle discomfort, which is a very admirable trait to have. It's a very tough trait to have. And I think as men, we want to feel that toughness. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to continue to keep doing these workouts. And I'm only going to do them because I really don't want to do them. And for the remainder of COVID, I did what I called the COVID workouts. I would wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I would run to this platform, which is, I would say, maybe 0.8 miles away, maybe a little bit under a mile away. I would do the workout in the snow. I would literally like kick the snow off. I remember initially I didn't wear gloves. Then I ended up wearing gloves. I was wearing a hat. I was wearing a hoodie and some pants. And I would do this workout, and then I would run home, and it would be about an hour. And I remember I would do this on Monday. I would do this every day, Monday through Friday. And on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I focus on upper body. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, I focus on lower body. And what I ended up doing was I actually ended up doing a Murph type of workout on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I got a book bag. I put a 20-pound dumbbell in the book bag, and I tied the book bag really hard to my body, and I ran to this platform to work out with the dumbbell in the book bag. I did the workout in a Murph set. So I did pull-ups with the dumbbell, I did push-ups, and then I did air squats. And I did you could say a modified Murph every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I remember the first week, the dumbbell had sharp points to it, and it would hit me in my back, my lower back, when I would run, and it cut my whole lower back, and the blood just kind of went down my like lower back to like my rear end to like my hamstrings. And so I ended up actually having to wrap the dumbbell in a bed sheet, and then for like some cushion to actually continue this workout. And so for all of COVID, I was doing these like very blunt body weight workouts where I would literally run at 5 a.m. through snow in downtown Rochester, New York, to this CrossFit platform. I would be doing push-ups in the snow. I would be doing pull-ups. It would be windy. It would be snowing. There would be homeless men around me who were screaming and yelling crazy things into the world. And the only light I really had was the moon if it was out there. If it wasn't out there, I really didn't have any light. And I remember the majority of the times I would go silent, because I would kind of want to know if like a homeless man was going to attack me or something. Like I needed to have a little bit of a surroundings. And I did these on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would go and just do lunges. I would do air squats, Bulgarian split squats, all these different lower body things. And then I'd run home. And I remember as I was going through COVID, all of my buddies who would come over, yes, we did have friends come over during COVID, sue me for that. And so we had friends come over, and I would ask them, I was like, hey, how are you guys doing in COVID? And they're like, dude, I'm struggling. And I'm like, what are you guys struggling with? They're like, I don't know how to work out. A lot of my buddies were saying, hey, I'm like doing a lot of drugs. I'm drinking much more. I like don't know what to do with myself. It was horrible, right? Isolation I remember my business partner once said, isolation is what you do to the worst criminals in the world. And then we isolated every single human on the face of the earth. Right now, this is not me to get into the politics of COVID, but it was really, really hurting my buddies. And so I thought to myself, I'm like, I'm kind of thriving right now. Like I'm figuring out how to exercise. These exercises are really hard. I don't want to do them. And I'm really starting to change what I think about myself. And I remember those mornings of waking up at 5 a.m. and walking downstairs, putting my hoodie on, putting my hat on, my gloves, and putting that book bag on and tightening up that book bag and feeling like the weight of it, and then walking outside and feeling like the 20-degree air hit me in the face. And it was dead silent, and you could look and see the street lights, and you could see all the snow start to kind of fall throughout the light. And the thoughts that went through my head were around how many guys are doing this right now. Not a lot. Very, very small amount of guys, I think, were making the decisions to do those things. And I don't say this to sound cocky or arrogant, but I loved that thought. I loved that thought that I was separating myself into this smaller majority. And I was doing things that I know the majority of men did not want to do. Wake up at 5 a.m., put on a weighted book bag, and go run a little bit under 2 miles in a foot of snow, and then do a Murph workout in the middle of it. I knew that guys didn't want to do that. And so I kept doing that to build myself into a new confident version of myself. And so I tell this story because managing those thoughts in that moment built me into a new person. And if we don't actually create those challenges in our life, then we never have the opportunity to build ourselves into that new person. And so here's where this connects to the lesson for this episode. If you're a guy listening to this, this is how you are going to build more confidence. So you're going to love yourself more. You're going to appreciate yourself more. You're going to want to do more with your life. And if you're a parent, this is how you can help your son build this skill. Yesterday, I was talking to a colleague of mine, and we had this conversation about self-image and confidence. And I asked him, I said, how do you think young men today can improve their confidence? And his answer was around, hey, getting around coaches, getting around good people, right? Inspiration, right? And I totally agree with that. And then I brought up this idea that I like to call controlled friction. Controlled friction is where we actually create friction in our lives, yet we do it in a controlled manner. And here's what I mean. If I would have said, hey, I'm going to go run 10 miles in the snow, and I'm going to do 1,000 push-ups and 1,000 air squats and 500 sit-ups, that's not controlled friction. That's overwhelm. That's too much friction. Controlled friction was, I'm going to run 0.8 miles, I'm going to do 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats, and then run 0.8 miles back to my house. That's controlled friction. And as we start to build more of this controlled friction into our lives, we then start to basically overcome the friction. We then start to build these little challenges into our days, and this is what completely changed my life. Because the other controlled friction was I started to read at night. I didn't like reading. I hated reading. I liked going on Instagram. I liked looking at the pretty girls on Instagram or going on TikTok and things like that. That was way more fun than reading, in all honesty, to me. Yet I knew that picking up a book and reading about personal development or reading about psychology or determination or toughness in the long term was probably going to make me into a better man. So I decided that every night I was literally just going to read, I think, 5 pages of a book. And I remember when I told my business partner that, he's like, you're reading 5 pages? He's like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, hey, let's start small, controlled friction. And I remember I started doing this each night, and then it grew into 10 minutes, then it grew into 15 minutes. And now I read for 15 minutes every single day, and I love reading. And the thing about it is when you decide to read a book instead of go on Instagram, that's a little bit more friction. And that friction sticks with you. You remember the fact that you did that. I think you could go to a bar and you could look around in that bar and you could see 20 guys. Of those 20 guys, how many of them decided to read that day versus go on Instagram? Probably a very small amount. Yet if you know that you did it, what do you think happens to what you think about yourself? That's where I say, like, confidence, discipline, all this stuff is built in the shadows. It's built around creating that controlled friction. Having controlled friction in your diet. If you're ordering Uber Eats and DoorDash, learn how to cook a little bit. Learn about ground beef, about steak, about chicken. These are the things that I started to do because it started to basically change what I thought about myself. And the feeling that you get, it's tough to describe that feeling because you know that, like I said in the beginning, your parents can't give this to you. Your friends can't give this to you. This is a self-built image. It's a self-built possession and aura that is tough to describe, right? And I talk about it all the time about, like, hey, when you look in the mirror and you love what you see, that is something that nobody will ever be able to take away from you. And it's worth waking up at 5 a.m. It's worth learning how to cook some ground beef and cook some steak. It's worth putting down the phone and opening up a book. That stuff compounds over time and over the long term. If you start doing this when you're 20 years old, by the time you're 22, you've got 2 years of controlled friction in your life. Having a bedtime, having a wake time. I say this because I think there's a lot of guys right now in the world who are just living way comfortable lives. They can order food right to their house. They can message girls on Hinge and Tinder. They can go on social media and get those dopamine hits. They stay up super late and play video games. They're okay with just the mediocrity of who their life is. And frankly, I believe that's a problem. Yet if they don't think it's a problem, that there's no pain there, they're never going to change. The reason that I changed during that COVID time was because I could not deal with the fact of going back to not loving who I was. I had worked too hard to build myself into somebody that I was proud of and I appreciated, and not working out and just letting COVID win. Excuse my language, but I said, fuck that. I'm figuring this out. I'm not going to let COVID win. I'm going to win, and this is going to change me into somebody who I respect and who I love and who one day I can possibly make a podcast about and maybe save a young man's life. That's what creating controlled friction in your life can do. All right? So I hope this idea of controlled friction landed with you. If you are a guy and you're stuck and you don't know what to do, the things I did, I literally did, all right, I'm going to develop an exercise routine. I'm going to develop a reading routine. I'm going to develop a sleeping routine. These are the exact controlled frictioned habits we teach guys in the 12-week habit and confidence program. It gives us a direction. It gives us something to sink our teeth into. And when we have something to sink our teeth into, that's when we feel a purpose. That's when we feel like there's a reason that I hear. That's when I feel like, God damn it, I think I actually matter. And that's a really cool feeling. That's what we help guys do, all right? And if you are 18 and up and you want to have that feeling and you want to do it with a bunch of badass dudes who want to do it with you, shoot me a message on Instagram at DJ Logory. DJ Logory. Let me know you listened to this episode, number 197, and we can have a conversation about a couple of those controlled friction things that you can do, and we can check in whenever you need to, okay? So thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope it was valuable. I hope you got something out of it. All I'm going to ask is that you rate the show today. All right. Would love if you gave it a 5-star rating, but if you don't think it's a 5-star rating, gosh dang it, do not give it a 5-star rating then. Give it what you believe it deserves. And that's my job to provide more value moving forward. And nonetheless, I appreciate you guys tuning in. And until next time, keep being that guy, and we'll talk to you guys soon.